Hello everybody, it's the Warhipster here, coming at you with another Contrast Plus painting tutorial, and today we are painting Gaunt's Ghosts. Yes, here they are, in all their glory. Finally rendered in plastic, and they look absolutely beautiful. And hopefully, we're going to create some beautiful looking models for you today in the Contrast Plus style of painting. So, before any painting gets done, they've all been primed with Wraithbone. It's going to give us a lovely warm finish for those very unique camo cloaks that we're going to be doing very shortly. So, grab your paints, grab your brushes, and let's get started. So the place we're going to start with on Gaunt's Ghosts is with all of the black. Now it's a slightly different recipe for both Gaunt and the rest of the ghosts. I'm going to demonstrate on Major Elim Rawn here what we're going to do first, but his cloak, well not his cloak, his clothes, so like his shirt and his trousers, are a slightly different tone to the rest of the ghosts. They've got this really clean black look, and he's got a bit of that on his boots, but he doesn't have it all over him. So we're going to start with the rest of the ghosts, and the colour that we're going to be using is Ultramarines Blue. This is going to act as our pre-shade for when we come to do the black shortly after this coat. So we're going to take that Ultramarines Blue on our brush. We're just going to pick a place to start, and I'm going to start down here on the leg, on the foot I should say. What we want to do is we want to cover in their boots, their trousers and their shirts with this. Now there are some extra black details. These are going to be on areas like some of the gun casings, but it's not all of the gun casings. So we're going to come back and do those a little bit later. It'll be a very, very similar colour scheme to how we'll do these, but just for the sake of keeping things neat and tidy, and for ease of filming for all of you guys, we're just going to focus on the soft details for now. So as I say, boots, gloves, if they've got any, trousers and shirts. And again, we only want to do Commissar Gaunt's boots with this blue. Now if you do happen to get any of this Ultramarines Blue anywhere where you don't want it, don't worry too much. Just neaten it back up with some Wraithbone. And so with that done, you should have Ultramarines Blue like this on all of the ghosts. That. Now what I have also done is I have also added Ultramarines Blue to his hat, because the brim of it is nice and shiny clean rather than the same colour as what we are now about to do. So the colour we're going to be using is Wyldwood, and we're going to be using this for his kind of black trousers and his black jacket. And this is going to happen, this is similar to our Ultramarines Blue. This is going to act as our pre-shade for when we do the black. So what we're going to do is just take that Wyldwood on our brush and just start painting it all over the areas that we want to be black. Just ignoring those cuffs on the jacket. Those are going to be red, as is his wont as a commissar. And so with that Wyldwood applied to Gaunt, what we are now going to do is So we're going to colour in all of that black. And the colour we're going to be using, funnily enough, is Black Templar. And what we want to do is we want to put this all over the top of all of the blue and all of that Wyldwood that we've just painted in on all of our characters. And so with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to highlight all of our clean black. So on Gaunt, it's going to be the hat brim there and his boots. And for the rest of the ghost, it's going to be all of that black that we originally did with the Ultramarines Blue. As you can see, you've got those different tones of black on Gaunt. It already looks fantastic. It's about to look even better. So what we are going to do is we're going to highlight that clean black. And the colour that we're going to be using is Russ Grey. Now what we want to do is we just want to take small amounts of Russ Grey at a time. And we want to pick out all of the sharp edges in all of our black details. Just like this. So with that done, what we're then going to do is take some Fenrisian Grey. I'm going to use this as a little bit of a spot highlight, just to add a little bit of brightness here and there. So for example, on Gaunt's Commissar hat, we just want to add a little bit of it coming around the sharpest point of the peak. Similarly on his boots, what we want to do is we just want to pick out any kind of sharp corners. Just add a little bit of brightness in there. And so with that done, what we now want to do is we want to highlight Gaunt's slightly browner leather. And the colour we're going to be using for this first is Stormvermin Fur. That process is exactly the same as what we've just done on the cleaner black. So you just want to start picking out all of the sharp edges and creases. With that Stormvermin Fur applied, we then want to take a tiny amount of Administratum Grey, and much like we did on the clean black, just want to add a little bit of this Administratum Grey on the corners and sharpest points of each of these folds and highlights that we've just done. Just like this. And so with that done, Gaunt and, well, his ghosts should be looking somewhat like this. So what we're going to do now is going to work on those oh so distinctive Tanith cloaks. Now the colour we're going to make is a roughly 2 parts Militarum Green to 1 part Creed Camo to 1 part Contrast Medium. Now you can use as a little bit more contrast medium if you want. It's entirely up to you, but I've just got one part in here just to improve the flow just a little bit. And what we're going to do is we're just going to paint this all over the cloaks. I'm just going to start here on the end. Just going to use these nice big broad brush strokes to just pull this paint down. Just like this. We want to do it all over the outside and the inside of the cloak. Just like that. And so with that done, what we are then going to do is we're going to do the exact same thing again. Same mix. 2 parts Militarum Green, 1 part Grey Camo to 1 part contrast medium. We're just going to take this again all over the top. A little too much on my brush there. Just like this. And so with that done, what we're now going to do is going to highlight those cloaks using some Ogryn Camo. So what we want to do is pick up that Ogryn Camo on our brush, a little too much. We just want to start picking out all of the raised areas in the folds of the cloak. Now, this doesn't have to be a perfectly thin highlight, it can be a little bit wide. You just want to avoid anywhere where there's contrast paint has settled in the recesses, for sure. But if it's a little bit wider than normal, it doesn't matter too much. So with that Ogryn Camo applied as our highlight, what we're now going to do is we're going to add that camo pattern. And the colour we're going to be using first is Militarum Green. Now what we want to do is we want to take a reasonably smallish brush. So I'm going to be using a small layer brush here from Citadel. And what we want to do is we want to just like pinch out the bristles so that they're flat like that and they're a little bit spaced out. And what we want to do then is we want to take small amounts of Militarum Green on our brush. And you just want to add little dabs here and there. It's a little too much paint on my brush, so that's okay. Just mop some of that up. We just want to do this like this all over our cloaks. like that. Try not to think too much about doing it. Like, you want this to kind of be a random pattern, so just approach it quite haphazardly. And you can do as much or as little of this as you like. Like so. I'll demonstrate again on Gaunt. So once again, I'm just going to flatten out the brush. Take some paint on my brush. It's a little too much. Just going to take most of that excess off. I'm just going to start adding different sized dabs all over. Till I'm reasonably happy with it. And so with that Militarum Green applied, what we're then going to do is we're going to do the very same thing, and you want to do slightly less of it now, but with Wyldwood. So once again, just take our brush, just pinch it till it's flat, splayed out a little bit, like that. Take that Wyldwood on your brush, dab off most of the excess, and then similarly, we're going to add little dabs of the Wyldwood. All over. And so with that done, our cloaks are looking pretty cool. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take some Ogryn Camo. We're going to water it down just a little bit more than we normally would, so it's a little bit thinner. And what we want to do is we're going to just add little tiny patterns of it in between our brown and our green. And so with that done, what we now want to do is we're going to kind of make it all look like it's part of the same scene. And so what we want to do is we want to take some Plaguebearer Flesh, and we just want to paint this in a nice smooth coat over the top of all of our cloak. Just like this. And so with that done, there's just one last thing left to do to these cloaks, and that is to add the kind of dirt that's built up around the hem of the cloak. Hem? Bottom. End. Anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to use Cygor Brown for this, but we're going to thin it down. So we're going to use about 7 parts contrast medium, 6 or 7 parts contrast medium to 1 part Cygor Brown. What we want to do is we want to just load up our brush with that mixture. And on one of our cloaks, let's just do it with Gaunt. And what we want to do is basically, we want to add this Cygor Brown all over the bottom, just like this. Then, once we're happy with how much we've got on there, just a little bit more, like that. What we do is we wash the brush, and then we just, where the colours are meeting, we just kind of dab at it with the brush, just to kind of thin out that transition. So it doesn't kind of get like a straight line, which can happen at this point, which you definitely don't want. Like so. And you just want to go around the cloaks like this until you're happy with it. And you can do a second layer of this if you want, just to make it really dark at the bottom. Just demonstrate this on the back as well, as you can see. You can see like that. There's that line which we don't want. So we wash the brush, and then just where the colours meet, we dab with the brush like that, and it smooths it out. Like that. So you get this lovely kind of fade down into the dark. And as I say, you can just do this again if you want. So you can just add a little bit more of this towards the bottom. Like that. So with that done, Gaunt's ghosts, and Gaunt himself obviously, should be looking somewhat like this. So what we're going to do now is going to move on, because those cloaks are now finished, which is lovely. And the colour we're going to be using first is Wyldwood. We're going to be using this for any leather and any wood. So for example, on this las rifle here, there is some wood. So what we want to do, take that Wyldwood, and just on the stock of the rifle, just down here, we want to paint this in. As well as on the main kind of body of it. like that. And similarly, we've got this strap here. That comes under his arm and down here. And we've got the belt and the pouches as well. And so with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to use some Ultramarines Blue, because we're going to be painting in the rest of the black details. Now these are going to be mostly things like weapon casings and such. So what we want to do is we want to take this Ultramarines Blue, and just like before when we did with the black, so we just want to pick out the areas that we want to be, well, this black. So for example, on the las rifles, it's these kinds of smooth areas here. Like that, ignoring the grip and the magazine. Don't worry about getting it on the little safety switches and things like that, because we are going to be going over that with a silver. And again, it doesn't matter too much if you do get it on the grip and the magazine, because as I say, we are going to be going over it in silver. Just like that. Similarly at this back part on the butt of the rifle. And again on the barrel. And with that done, what we're then going to do is we're going to use Black Templar once again over the top of these areas. Just like that. And so with that done, what we're now going to do, don't worry about highlighting it, we're going to do all that a little bit later. The colour we're going to use next is Flesh Tearers Red. Now we're going to be using this just on the scabbards for their daggers. Gaunt himself has got a little bit more red on him, like his long sash, but we're not going to be painting that in the Flesh Tearers Red, we want that to be a different tone. So, what we are going to do, as I say, is we're going to take Flesh Tearers Red. We want to paint this all over the top of their sheaths for their daggers. Just like this. So with that Flesh Tearers Red applied, what we will now do is focus on Gaunt's individual details. The colour that we're going to use first is Blood Angels Red, and this is going to be all for the remaining red details on him. So this is going to include areas like the cuffs of his jacket, his sash, that goes all the way around his belt and stuff like that, as well as the top rim round here on his hat. And with that done, what we then want to do is we want to use some Nazdreg Yellow. And we want to use this to paint in the tassels at the end of his sash. Down here. Like so. Should we do on both sides? And we want to use this Nazdreg Yellow on his shoulders. as well as the bars going across his chest. And the trim on his jacket, basically. So this little bit here. And so with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to use some thinned down Iron Warriors. We're going to use this to paint in all of our silver details. So with that Iron Warriors applied, what we're now going to do is we're going to use some thinned down Retributor Armour to paint in all of our gold details. So what we'll do is we'll first start on Gaunt, because he's relatively simple to do. And what we want to do is we want to pick out the badge, on his chest. Just like that. I'm going to pick out the emblem on his hat. The wings on the chainsword. Just here. We also want to pick out the belt buckle. And the decorative features, or rather the pommel and the hilt of the knife, and the bottom part of the scabbard, because the top part is silver. So you just want to pick out this little section just down here, like that. Now similarly, we'll finish him in just a minute. On the ghosts, we also want to pick out their belt buckles. The hilt and the pommel on their knives, badges on their chests, and the bottom part of their scabbards. And on any of the las rifles, we want to pick out the Aquila. And so with those gold details applied, again, don't worry about shading and highlighting just yet. We are going to put on our last couple of base coats, and then we're going to do it all at the end. So the next one we're going to do is all of the skin, and the colour we're going to be using is Darkoath Flesh. So we'll demonstrate this on this fella. What we want to do, take our Darkoath Flesh, just start painting it over all of their skin. Just like this. With that Darkoath Flesh applied, just on the ghosts, what we want to do now is take some Black Templar. I want to use this to colour in their hair. Gaunt's hair is a different colour. Hopefully all the rest of them have got the same hair colour. And next up, we then want to take a tiny amount of Skeleton Horde. I want to use this on Gaunt's hair. She's got a little bit poking through just there and around behind his ear. just like that. And so with that done, all of our base coats are now on. So now it's time to do some shading. And the colour we're going to be using is Basilicanum Grey. We're going to be using this as, well, the shade for all of our colours that need shading. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to use this Basilicanum Grey over the top of all of our metallics. So our silver and our gold. Just there, like that. What we also want to do, however, just finish off this dagger blade actually. Like so. What we also want to do, as I said, is when we come to doing the wood on the rifles, so we also want to use this Basilicanum Grey over the top of that as well. Just like that. And so with that done, Gaunt's ghosts are looking pretty fantastic. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start the highlighting. And the place we're going to start with is on all the flesh. Now the colour that we're going to be using is Flayed One Flesh. And what we want to do is we want to take our brush, this size, so I'm using an Artist Opus size 00, and we want to first start on our faces. So I'm going to start up here on Gaunt's face. What we want to do with this Flayed One Flesh is we just want to start picking out the sharpest features in his skin. Just like this. Similarly on areas like his hands. Just like that. Similarly, on the ghosts themselves, you want to do the same thing on their facial features. We're picking out the sharpest points. Like so. What we also want to do is we want to add some of this around the muscles as well. And with that done, what we now want to do is we want to add a little bit of colour into their faces. Just to add a little bit of warmth and also a little bit of pinkness. So what we're going to do is going to make a roughly 4 parts contrast medium to 1 part Magos Purple mix. We want to use very small amounts of this as we do this. We want to be very careful because it's very watery. Just want to be very controlled so as you don't like overload this section. We just want to paint this all over all of their skin. Just making sure, as I say, to watch out for any dark blobs of it. And next up, with that done, what we then want to do is take a tiny amount of Black Templar. We want to use this to block in the eyeballs. just like that. And with that black Templar applied, what we then want to do is we want to take a tiny amount of Screaming Skull. We want to add a little dot on either side of the middle of each of his eyes, like that. And with those eyes done, similarly again, we want to use some Screaming Skull, only this time just want to paint in his teeth. As well as highlight Gaunt's hair. But everyone else has to wait just for a minute. And with that done, we then want to take some Volupus Pink. We want to use this to paint in his tongue. As well as dab a little bit of it on his bottom lip, like so. Similarly, on the ghosts, we can take a little bit of Volupus Pink, very tiny amount here, just around their bottom lips. So with that done, what we're going to do now is we're going to move on and highlight the hair, and the colour that we're going to be using is Dawnstone. And then next up we want to use a diddy amount of Administratum Grey. Just add a few little spot highlights into the hair. Just like that. And next up, just on Sergeant Scout Ogryn Camo, I think that's how you say it, what we're going to do is we're going to use a tiny amount of Ulthuan Grey just on the tip of his beard. Just like that. And next up, now we're going to continue with our highlights. What we're going to do first is we're going to use some Liberator Gold to highlight all of our gold details. And so with that done, what we're then going to do is we're going to use some Iron Hand Steel to highlight all of our silver details. And so with that done, what we're now going to do is going to highlight those black weapon casings with some Russ Grey. And with that Russ Grey applied, what we then do is we take some Fenrisian Grey and just add it to the sharpest points. And so with that done, we've just got some unique details left to do, and we're just going to keep on with Gaunt, and then we'll just do the last couple on the rest of them. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use some Ungor Flesh, and we're going to use this to highlight all of our Nazdreg Yellow. Just like this. And so with that done, what we're then going to do is going to take some Wild Rider Red. I'm going to use this to highlight the red details on Gaunt. Just like that. So with that done, Colonel Commissar Ibram Gaunt himself is now finished, apart from his base. We'll get to that in just a minute. So what we are going to do is we're just going to fill in the last couple of unique details that we've got, and we're just going to pop him to one side. Now, we've also finished at this point. It's got Sergeant Scout Owen Cole. I have really no idea how to say that. Tell me down in the comments. He's finished, as is Major Elim Rawn. He's finished as well. We've also finished Colonel Colm Corbeck. He's looking awesome. So the last two to do are Try Again Bragg and Master Sniper Hlain Larkin. Now, what we're going to do first is we're just going to very quickly take some Talassar Blue for Try Again Bragg, and we're going to use this on his goggles up here. Like that. So he's now finished. So what we're going to do next, just keep rolling, because why not? What we're going to do next is we're going to take some Blood Angels Red, and on the sniper scope here, which I've painted in with Liberator Gold. And I should point out that those goggles on Try Again Bragg were painted with iron hand steel, like with a silver. But the lens for the sniper rifle has been painted in the same style as the gold. So what we're going to do is take that Blood Angels Red. I'm just going to pop this all over the top. Just like that. So with those two details done, the contrast paint going over the really bright shiny metallics has done all of the work for us, because we want them to be quite bright but also just have that kind of mirror sheen to them, which is exactly what we've got. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to paint in the various trees that our Gaunt's ghosts are standing on, and the colour we're going to make is a roughly 1-to-1 mix of Cygor Brown and Black Templar. All we want to do is just get this mix all over the tree branch, just avoiding, if we can, little vines that are hanging off them. And of course, be very careful once you get close to your miniatures. So with that done on these four gentlemen, what we're now going to do is going to paint in those little hanging vines, and the colour that we're going to be using for that is Militarum Green. And so with that done, we're now going to colour in them all of that negative space. Now you can do this whatever you like, but I'm going to be using Astrogranite. And with that Astrogranite applied, what we're then going to do is shade all of that Astrogranite with some Basilicanum Grey. And so with that done, what we're then going to do is going to give the entire base a gentle dry brush of Tyrant Skull. Including the trees. And so with that done, I've added some tufts to their base, so all that's left to do is to colour in the rim. And the colour I'm going to be using is Steel Legion Drab.
Men of Tanith, do you want to live forever? You didn't think you'd get through an entire hour-long video of Gaunt's ghosts being painted and not hear that quote, did you? Come on now. Yes, now we've finished the ghosts, the Tanith first and only. They are remarkable models. They're really, really, really fun to do. Those camo cloaks are absolutely gorgeous and fantastic. I'm really, really pleased with how they've come out, and the contrast paint's really just kind of elevating them to that next level. And it was a very, very simple thing to do, I thought. Just a couple of colours over a nice green base. Job's a good one. I'm really starting to think about what other camo patterns I could possibly do in similar style. If you enjoyed this video, you love the channel, and you'd like to support me further, like these legends and bosses that you can see on the screen before you, you can do so. Head to patreon.com/warhipster or head to ko-fi.com/warhipster. Don't forget to share it, like it, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And to make sure you stay up to date, don't forget to click the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Happy wargaming.